Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm from a company called Interact, and Interact was called Interact when we started it as a slight pun, interact. So everybody within Interact has a background in professional theatre. So what we sought with Interact was to bring the skills and knowledge from theatre into the corporate world. And one of the things that really interests me, and it's been very interesting to be here today, one of the things that interests me is the overlap between executive coaching, and coaching in general, and the work that we do. So the work we do is skills coaching. It's practice-based coaching. It's getting people up and doing things and giving them feedback on it. And one of the things that I'm exploring at the moment with the Academy is where those things overlap and how the two might benefit one another. And sometimes you find they overlap a long way. I was at the somatics session, and I thought, this isn't very different to some of the work that we do in terms of the physicality of leadership, in terms of handling nerves, in terms of using your voice well, and having the right physicality to use your voice well. So I think it's really interesting, the interaction. And I think there is a growing interaction between skills coaching and the kind of coaching that most of you will do. One of the other elements that we brought from theatre was a love and knowledge of language and the effect of language. So I'm going to do two parts this afternoon. The first part is all around language and why language matters. And the second part is to introduce you to some of the methodologies and techniques that we've developed to make practice-based learning both comfortable and effective. So, language matters. So you're all really knowledgeable people. What percentage of communication is non-verbal? You love that. 58? 80? 90? Okay. Depends how you measure it. Depends what you mean by non-verbal. Are we talking about paraverbal? Are we talking about facial expression? All of those things. An oft-quoted figure is 93%. Who came up with the 93%? Morabian. Morabian in the 1970s put together a study that said 93% of all communication is non-verbal. And then somebody came along and said, wow, that's interesting. And they took it out of the study and they put it in another study and so on and so on and so on. From an Interact point of view, that's rubbish. Not that we're presumptuous or anything. And so when I was told that figure, I decided to go back and look at the original study. Anybody know what he was studying? Lawyers. Well, actually, lawyers came into it, but he wasn't studying lawyers. He was studying the couples going through marital problems who were at the lawyers. Two of the groups he was studying, couples going through marital problems and teenagers at a dance trying to get off with each other. Now, the only reason he got that 7% was it was America and not the UK. The answer is it's all context. And language is incredibly important. And in most organizations, as they become global and matrix organizations, it's becoming even more important because lots of the communication is done through email or text. The written word, for the first time since 1900, in the last 10 years, we have started to use the written word more and more and more. Because we email, we text. And it's had some strange effects. For instance, audiences at foreign language films in the UK and in France in the last 2 years have gone up by 300% a year. And the reason they think it is because we've become more comfortable with the written word, the subtitle. We don't mind them being part of our lives. So language to organizations is becoming important. And in a text or an email, particularly an email, there is no paraverbal. A smiley face is not a tone. Or at least it shouldn't be. So the words we use have an effect. So I asked you when you arrived today if you would answer the question, what is leadership? And what I did to what you wrote, was I linguistically audited it. That's a phrase that we invented because I think we were working with PwC at the time. And we thought they'd like the word audit in it somewhere. So what is a linguistic audit? A linguistic audit is an interpretive analysis of the language that an individual or a team or an organization or a culture uses. Let's look at the words and let's look at what that might say about that person or that group or that organization. And people do reveal themselves through the language they use. It was interesting reading yours because you're kind of all in the same area, and so I wondered whether there was be a consistency in the language that you use. And there was. So a linguistic audit is an interpretive analysis. Half of it is the science. Are we using nouns, verbs, or adjectives? Is it in the present simple, the present continuous, the past historic? Do we use the active voice or the passive voice? All of these has an effect on what we do. So that's the kind of science element of it, if you like. The other element is, my own background was I was a writer in residence for 3 years, so I had to write plays to order. So when I read what you had written this morning on what is leadership, I thought, if I was a playwright and I'd written that for one of my characters, what would I be trying to say about that character? What I'm going to cover today is just the basic building blocks, nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and what they do for you and the effect they are. So the first thing is, are you, as an audience, mostly nounal, mostly verbal, or mostly adjectival? And I thought before this, because, for instance, if you go into work in the medical sphere, working with doctors and how they communicate with patients and other members of staff, that kind of thing, they tend to be heavily nounal. If you work with Saatchi and Saatchi, and we've done a lot of work with Saatchi and Saatchi on the language of brands, and they're incredibly adjectival. And if you go into FMCGs, you find that they're very verbal. It's all about task, task, task. So I wondered what you would be, or whether there would be any consistency at all. And it was really surprising what I found, because I didn't expect to find it. The first thing is, there was almost a complete lack of adjectives in you. And I expected you to be much more adjectival. So I looked at between 40 and 50 of these. It's a good sample for you as a group. And there was only one person who was adjectivally driven out of the whole 40-odd that I looked at. And then I thought, well, academia, generally, tends to be very nounal. And so I thought, well, I wonder if you're kind of academics, in a sense. You know, maybe you'll be nounal. You weren't nounal. Interestingly enough, you were all verbal. Or that was the majority. So it was about 2/3 verbal, about 1/3 nounal, and one of you was adjectival. And you know who you are. Okay, so let's look at some things. And I'm going to ask Keith. Keith is one of our associates. He's a professional actor. And I want you to hear them as well as see them. So I've taken some examples. I've taken examples of nouns, examples of verbs, and examples where adjectives were there. And I want you to explore the effect of these things. So, what is leadership, we asked?
Vision, direction, inclusion, gaining fellowship. Or followership, sorry.
It's right, you only got this at lunchtime. So
it's a new word on me.
What effect does that have on you? What's the effect of vision, direction, inclusion, gaining followership? You feel like you're being told it, yeah? What does? It's static. It's very solid, isn't it? It doesn't have movement in it. And that's why academics like it. It's fact-based. It feels like it's fact-based. Abstract nouns drive most of academia. Let's have a look at another one.
Communication, vision, direction, and goals. Building great relationships. Ensuring people have the capability and motivation to deliver the results.
Do you get that solidity? Like that credibility that he has because it's noun-driven. So one of the things is, if you're coaching somebody, what kind of situations would they want to be able to flex their style to a more nounal style, do you think? When they want authority.
When they want to be more directive.
When they want to be more directive, more certain.
Stabilizing the organization.
Stabilizing the organization. So here's a story. I was asked to do some coaching of a chief executive of a global mobile telephone company, or actually just a telephone company. And he'd been parachuted in. The company was in some trouble. He was parachuted in from America. He came over here, and I had to do his first analysts' breakfast meeting. This is where you really want credibility. And he arrived, a really nice guy. And I said, let's practice the presentation. And he said, just a second. He got his bag out. He opened his bag, and inside the bag was a big cardigan. Do you know, like Starsky and Hutch? I don't know which one it was. The one that, is it Starsky or Hutch? Starsky, thank you. Reveals so much more about you as an audience. So he took his cardigan out and he put it on. And I said, well, what's the cardigan for? And he said, this is my presentations cardigan. I always wear this. It makes me feel like I can be one with them. I can talk to them. I'm relaxed. I tell stories. It's my storytelling cardigan. Which is fine if you may be doing a fireside speech to the troops. But if you're talking to analysts at a breakfast, it's just about the worst thing that you can do. So a lot of this is about recognizing language and the effects of language. And I think one of the things that might be interesting for coaches is what can they tell about the person they coach from the language they use? And then how can they start to allow that person to adapt their language to different areas so it's more relevant to what they want to do, or who they want to be, or where they want to go.
Leadership focuses direction for people and builds teams with coaching and mentoring to bring their purpose to life.
So here, it's not entirely nounal, but it's still driven by nouns. You have leadership, direction, people, team, coaching and mentoring, they're both nouns. Purpose, very nounal. And there's some real value in it. Interestingly enough, if you have somebody who, when they present, talks too fast, as I have a tendency to do, if they use more nouns, their brain slows the delivery down. And it's something to do with the fact that nouns are, either abstract nouns or nouns, feel solid to people. So their brains slow it down because they feel a solid thing.
Direction, decisiveness, clarity, energy, belief.
The other thing that happens when people use nouns is they tend to make lists. And that has an effect in its own way. You notice the bullet points. One of the things I like about getting people to handwrite is you get all the things coming through their brain out to the pen. So you get people drawing doodles. And whenever possible, we try to recreate them when we're showing them to people. Or you get people crossing through things or underlining things. Or sometimes you can just tell how strongly they feel by how hard the pen has gone into the paper. So this person actually pressed pretty hard. I've got some bullet points. I'm going to get it over. It's very, very solid. So there are upsides and downsides to the language that we use. But in general, let's look at what nouns give you. They give you credibility. If you use more nouns, people will believe you're more credible. It gives you weight. You were talking in your session, Nick, about people wanting gravitas. Where's gravitas in Accountancy 202, as you very rightly put it? But actually, nouns give you more gravitas if you use more nouns. It believes you're measured because it's dispassionate. Nouns tend to be dispassionate. We see them as things. We don't believe that there's a really strong emotional connection to them. So there are times when it would be brilliant to access nouns, and times when it's entirely inappropriate. Let's look at the next group. So I've tried to recreate this. I was typing furiously outside. This is verbs, and the first thing about verbs is it's a mess. People who write in verbs write in a mess. They're in a hurry. So you see all those little bits above the line. That's where whoever wrote this put one of those little, I couldn't find the symbol for it, saying, oh, I forgot to put this word in. I want this word. And they cross things out, and you can feel tired just reading it. Let's hear Keith try and read it.
Crafting strategy, business goals with others and motivating them to willingly move forward and achieve results together.
What do you get from verbs? Action. Yeah, the first thing you get is action. You get a sense of things happening. This feels so different to that first group. And yet, we're just flexing our language a little bit. So what else do we get from verbs? More flow. Yeah, definitely more flow and energy. And one of the things is, if you use more verbs, or you stress verbs that you are using, you will talk faster. You will feel like you have enormous energy. It will affect physically how you are. And one of the interesting things, referring to yours again, Nick, is that I think that what's exciting about this is you can approach from either end. You can take a physicality and embody that physicality, and it will give you a different dictionary. But what's equally exciting is if I can give you the dictionary you need, how will that change your physicality? How will the brain and the body respond from either end? And one of the things that struck me about what you were talking about is, I don't know how much you know about the work of Laban. So Laban, anyone know Laban? So it's all right. Well, a dancer would know Laban. Very good, John. So Laban was, for a while, Diaghilev's annotator. So he annotated the choreography for the ballet. And so he gave the dancers the positions they had to take for ballet dancing. And he decided, after doing this, and incredibly successfully all over the world, he decided that he couldn't become a brilliant choreographer or annotator unless he became a psychologist. Because he said what the dancers are having to do is they're having to embody emotional states. So he went off and he joined Jung. And he became a qualified psychologist. And he came back and he created what is known as the Laban annotation, still used 120 years later in ballet today. But what was strange was that the dancers said, oh my God, but I feel that. So they imposed on them a physicality. And it led to them having an emotional state. But also, it led to the audience going, yes, that's sad, or whatever it was. The audience also responded to the shape that was made. He then went into theatre and found that certain shapes suited certain writing better than other shapes, certain intention. So he did a little work with Stanislavski about drivers and intention, and came up with a drama annotation, which is where I guess us from the theatre first came across it. So I think this is really exciting to look at it from all these sides. For me, that's just energy on a paper.
Making things happen that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Another thing that happens when you use, it's a very strange thing, but when you use verbs, you tend to repeat things. And it can be really powerful. The happen. You see on the next one, there's 3 times something's repeated. But again, making things happen. So what you find is that if you take Nike as an example, I think there was just do it and then make it happen. This is a sense of, hey, action. Our audience, our brand is about action, about achievement, about going somewhere. So let's do our brand and our strapline driven by verbs. So we use 2 repetitions. Let's go for 3.
Inspiring others to achieve what needs achieving because they want to achieve it.
I like that. It's very, very nice. Hard to say, though, isn't it, Heath? Hard to say. Achieve, achieve, achieve. I thought it might be interesting for you to hear what were the most common words through you all. So achieve was the fourth most common that was used. Obviously, it was unbalanced by 3 on this one person. The most common word was inspiring. What is leadership? Inspiring. Not inspiration, you'll notice. Now, inspiring is quite hard because sometimes it's the verb and sometimes it's the adjective. But inspiring was the most common. The second most common that you used was influencing. And that was used purely in a verbal sense. Inspiring, influencing, and then the real shock one for me, but I think it goes with the title of today. The third was results. Now, if I go back over, Interact's been going 17 years, and we started doing Linguistic Audit probably about 12 or 13 years ago. If I go back over that time, inspiring or inspiration or one of those would be in the top 5 for that whole period. Funnily enough, influencing and influence, that kind of word, that base word, doesn't appear that often until about 5 years ago. And that for me is interesting. I think it's something to do with how organized, this is for the question leadership. And I think that in lots of organizations, they don't think their leaders need to be influential because the hierarchy will do it for them. People will do what they say they have to do. So it's interesting if you as coaches, second most common word, influencing. Now, results I find the most interesting because 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been in the top 200. If we'd have gone, I would put money on it, if we went out to you 5 years ago, results wouldn't have been in the top 20 or top 30. And it makes me wonder how much, because of what's happened in the economy in the last 4 or 5 years, that everybody is realizing that results and getting results and demonstrating results is what success is deemed to be. And you might wonder for a moment of what effect that might have on coaching. Is it a good thing for coaching that suddenly results is the third and achieve was the fourth, which is, again, quite similar to results? What effect has that had on the way that we coach people? And the way that teams, internally and externally, but the way that teams are asked to be coached, and the way that individuals ask us to coach them. I think it's fascinating how things change and how the use of language changes.
Empowering others to believe, follow, and act on a vision.
And I have a brilliant rhythm. I put it in because I think it's got the most brilliant rhythm for a verb based. It's a real sense of growth from believe, follow, and act. It's a really nice piece of writing. It's a really nice use of the language. So, we've looked at nouns and verbs. And here are what verbs give you. Action, energy, the solutions, the future, motivation. Now, we've covered, really, motivation, energy, and action. Let me explain solutions and the future. Because I think this is very interesting for leaders. One of the things about verbs is that we see the future in verbs and we see solutions in verbs. What do we need to do to resolve this problem? And in fact, Interact does some of the training of ACAS's conciliators. And one of the things we train them to do is recognize where verbs are not being used and to get the protagonist to use more verbs. And when people use more verbs, they start becoming more solution-focused. I think it would be really interesting if in a conversational way, coaches got the coachees to use more verbs, how much more easily they might find solutions. It's a theory, it's not, I haven't put it into practice. But it's worked with groups that we've worked with, where people are stuck in a morass of emotion, and you want to get them out of that and looking for solution. That the use of verbs gets them there the most quickly. So let's look at our last group.
The process of building strong, authentic influence to achieve value.
Now, the interesting thing for the here, so we're into adjectives now, process of building strong, authentic influence. This was the single most adjectival card of them all. And it's not that adjectival. 2 adjectives on there, but they do drive it. So what do you think from this? A process of building strong and authentic influence to achieve value. What do you think that adjectives do for you, do for the individual? Sorry? Emotional connection, big emotional connections. The more adjectives you use, the more emotionally connected. Sorry? You go inward, and often backward as well. When we look at something that's going wrong, we look at the past very often. And it's a morass of emotion. 2 sides arguing employee relations. They will say, they're being despicable, they're being awful, they're being unfair. And the other side will use the adjectives as well. So they do that. On a positive note, that's a very positive statement. What do you think adjectives do for you on a positive note? So emotionally connecting, that's great. They might inspire. And that's very interesting, because is that whereas verbs are motivational, adjectives are inspirational. I was asked by the Sunday Times to linguistically audit the first Prime Minister's question time between Tony Blair and David Cameron. And one of the differences between the 2 of them was that Blair used almost entirely language driven by adjectives, and Cameron almost entirely driven by verbs. And then you look at the reasons, and you say, oh, well, hold on, they've got speechwriters. But the speechwriters respond to the needs of the individual, so if they're any good. Blair was on his way out, wanted to look like he had a legacy, so he wanted to seem inspirational. He wanted to show how inspirational he is. Cameron was coming in, wanted to show he was a younger man, full of action, full of energy, was going to do things, so he uses verbs all the way through. One of the other interesting things about that was that Cameron used we all the way through, and Blair used I all the way through. So I was asked why I thought they did that, and I said, well, I think it's quite easy for Blair. He's about to be leaving. He's in quite an insular position. He wants the I of the inspirational leader. Interestingly enough, people who are considered charismatic, there's some work being done on this, use I about 3 times the amount that other people use I. It doesn't have to be egocentric. It can be actually quite charismatic. And the reason that Cameron used we, well, his 3 predecessors had all been stabbed in the back, and he had 300 of his own people behind him. I'd have used we as well.
A precious and special responsibility to show the way forward, to enable, challenge, and support people to go from here to somewhere else.
It's very nice reading, Keith. One of the interesting things about this is obviously language is made up of all these things, but this is driven, the beginning of it is driven by adjectives, a precious and special responsibility, and that's the end. But it's so strong because it's at the beginning, and then it actually goes into verbs to show the way forward, to enable, challenge, and support, and then it finishes with nouns. So if I was writing for this person, I'd go, it's the wrong way around, because you get this dribble off because nouns are kind of solid. So if you will really change it, I'm going to try and change it around in a second. So if you said, if we want to go from here to somewhere else, we need to challenge, support, and enable people. And that is our special and precious responsibility. See how that feels completely different? It's the same words. So there's also a classic storytelling, goes from nouns into verbs into adjectives. So you start with nouns, you do the what so that you've all got the picture. Now I tell you what's happening with the what, and then finally I tell you how to feel about what's happening with the what. So classic storytelling, nouns into verbs into adjectives.
Inspirational motivation.
Why do you think I might have put that up there? It's only 2 words. Do I like brevity? Yeah, so you've got, what you actually have is you have the inspire, the verb, you have it as an adjective. And motivate, the verb, you have it as a noun. And so all the strength is behind the inspirational. That's what we hear. You hear inspirational motivation. It qualifies the noun, and that's one of the powers of it. It separates. If we want to show how different our organization or our team is from your team, it's the adjectives that show the difference. This isn't motivation. We all know what motivation is. This is inspirational motivation. Does that remind anybody of an advert? This isn't a cake. It's a chocolatey, creamy, boozy cake. That was very clever advertising. They changed a noun, Marks and Spencer's, into an adjective. This isn't just food. It's Marks and Spencer's food. Interesting enough, when Marks and Spencer's did that, I was told by somebody at Marks and Spencer's for first 6 months, they didn't change any of the food lines while that advert was going out. Same food lines, and they didn't change the setup of the stores. And in 6 months, they put 30% on food sales. That's the power of adjectives. Adjectives are the most powerful parts of language.
Right now, difficult, messy, tough, and even soul-destroying, but ultimately highly rewarding.
Okay, here's a secret. I cheated. That wasn't there. It was there in another piece that I did with an organization where this was very typical, but I wanted you to feel a really adjectival response. Just once more.
What, right now?
Yeah, please.
Oh, right now it's difficult, it's messy, it's tough and even soul-destroying, but ultimately highly rewarding.
One of my reactions to the current economic climate, and people have talked today about how tough it is out there, is that it seems to have an effect on leaders, maybe on people generally, is that they use less and less adjectives. It's all about getting things done, or the noun, and adjectives are disappearing from the corporate world. And yet when you consider that nouns are the differentiators between A and B, and what we're trying to show is the difference between us and them, when you consider that we buy nouns, or we buy adjectives, not nouns. We only ever buy adjectives. Nobody buys the noun. You don't buy a car. Nobody buys a car. You buy whatever adjective you put before that word car. You buy a red car, or a fast car, an economic car, a sexy car, a frugal car, a Japanese car. I don't know. You buy the adjective. Benefits and outcomes, taking your organization where you want to take it. Adjectives are so important, and yet they seem to be disappearing. So adjectives, they give you emotions, they give you benefits, they give you outcomes, they give you inspiration. And I think that as coaches, being aware of the language you use when you go in for a coaching session, is this more of an adjectival session or more of a nounal session? You know, if you go into a, what do they call those meetings you have where they decide which coach they want? Chemistry meetings. Chemistry meetings. It's the only time I've heard chemistry used as an adjective. It's a chemistry meeting, not just any meeting, it's a chemistry meeting. When you go into those, actually credibility you might want. You might want to stress the nouns for a chemistry meeting, or you might decide this is an organization or an individual that needs to do stuff, so you might want to reflect that in the verbs you use. Or you might want to be really inspirational with them, but just deciding. And if you decide, what I find interesting about this is that you can decide, and we've done this with people, come in and just be adjectival, as long as you know what an adjective is. You come in and be adjectival, and people will, and then don't think about it, people will do it. Their brains switch over. We don't have one dictionary in our brain. We have, I reckon, 60,000, 70,000, and we just switch into them naturally. I don't swear in front of my mother. Even now, I still don't. I don't think about it, though. And I've got 2 young boys, and I use different dictionaries with them. So it's just consciously saying, actually, I want to be adjectival today, or in this meeting, and trying it out, see what happens. I want to, there's just one more I wanted to play to you, because I just think it's, whoever wrote it, well done. What is leadership? You get asked when you arrive at a conference and you think, do I really want to answer this question? Well, here's my answer.
A term that has outlived its usefulness. It covers everything and anything anyone wants it to. I suggest we need to develop a richer language and set of categories that reflects the complexity of the subject.
Oh, I'd love to know it. You don't have to tell me who you are. I love that. This is very authentic. Yeah, it feels authentic, doesn't it? The only one that had I in it. Interesting enough, the only one out of all of them that had I. Okay, so that's language. Let's move on to showing you situational communication. And I mean communication in the broadest sense. So now, I asked the Academy for a volunteer, and Joella very kindly agreed to come and be a volunteer, so thank you, Joella. Okay. So I just want to show you a couple of the techniques that we've developed, because I think you might find them interesting. And so I phoned Joella a couple of days ago, and I said, what's your situation? Do you want to explain your situation to them?
Yes. I've recently written an e-book for women, and it's great, and I'm, going and giving presentations about it. And, in the excitement of having written that book, I thought, hey, I'm going to write another book. So my next book is going to be, instead of it being getting advice from senior women, distilling that advice and passing it on to younger women, which is what the first book was about, the second book is about, well, okay, what's the advice that senior men have for women about how to advance? Interesting topic, I thought. So what happened was a friend of mine said, my husband would be fine for that. Why don't you talk to him? You should put us together. I sent him an email saying what I wanted. Would he be prepared for me to come and interview him for an hour and ask him what his best advice was for women on how they could advance? And this is quite a senior man. And he sent me an email back saying, well, for a number of reasons, and one of them being time, I don't think I can help you. And that's what happened.
So this is a scenario. And I have to say, we've never trained anybody in a scenario like this. So this is going to be interesting for us all. So what Joella asked is that I'd quite like to be in front of him and be able to, firstly, I'll be able to find out what the real reasons are or whether it was time. And the second thing is, I'd like to develop, how do I put this to, having written this book, only from the point of view of women, how do I put the idea to men that I'd like to do the same about women, but to them? Which I think is quite a tough ask. So we're going to try and do that now, aren't we? So I'll take that all away from you. So this is the man that said no.
Right.
Okay, and Joella's going to come in, and she's going to. She has two things that she's coming in to do. One is to explore why he said no, and to maybe try and persuade him to change his mind. So this is his office.
Okay.
I'll introduce you. Keith, Joella's here for you.
Oh, right, please. I'll come in. Hi, Joella.
Oh, right. Hi, Keith.
Nice to
Great
meet
to
you.
meet you.
You
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Thanks
Please
for seeing
grab
me.
a seat.
That's great.
Yes, well, I got your message, and yeah, it's nice that we can actually meet
absolutely,
face to face.
Okay, how's she doing?
She's not on the front foot.
No, don't beat about the bush. Tell us what you really think.
Oh, God.
So actually, that's a term. Physically wasn't on the front foot either, you'll notice. Led by her knees on the way in. Often what we do when we're not wanting to really be there. I'm coming in, my head's behind me. Okay, so one of the things that we do, sorry we didn't talk about this, but one of the things we do often is get the actors, when we're working with actors, to put you on the receiving end, not of you, but of different types of people, and tell me the effect they make on you in the first 10 seconds. So now you're sitting there, and he's written a book about men, and he wants to come and talk to you, a senior person, about women talking about men. Yeah. Hey, whatever you like. Try anything.
Hi. Right, okay, I've got quite a few things I want to cover today, so I've got
Okay, hold it there. You didn't know what you let yourself in for, did you? How do you feel about him?
Not sure. I'm really not sure where
Did
he's
you know
coming
that physicality there, Nick? Not sure. Take my head away from him. Right. What is it that you're not? Why are you not sure?
He's like coming at me.
He's coming up to you. And so
he's anxious.
And look at the physicality.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a very male physicality, I have to say. So if you're going to make this meeting work, what are you going to have to do you think, to make it work?
I want to put him at ease.
You want that's okay. So that's going to be your driver, to put him at ease.
Yeah.
How long has it taken Joella to decide what she needs to do in this meeting? 9 seconds? 9 seconds, and we do. We make decisions in 9 seconds. All that stuff that happens not in our thought part of our brain, but the subconscious part of our brain, has responded to his physicality, has decided what his tone is like, has decided all those paraverbals that we were talking about, and has gone, I have to put him on his ease. We've already decided that. And yet how often when we have any kind of meeting do we not think about the first 10 seconds and the effect that we make in the first 10 seconds? Let's change his personality completely.
This is nerve-wracking.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Keith.
Hi, Keith. Great to meet you. Would you like a seat?
Thank you, yes. Is this convenient?
Of course it is. Do sit down.
Okay, let's hold it there. How has Joella changed? That's what I find interesting, first of all. What's changed in Joella? It's I own the space now. Hello, everybody. Take a seat. Come on, sit down. He's already changed you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do all these things without thinking, and a lot of the work that Interact does is about making people self-conscious. I can't think of a more self-conscious thing than standing up there with over 100 faces gawping at you. But we don't have 100 people normally in our training sessions. But we want to make them self-conscious because we want to make them conscious of themselves, conscious of what they're doing, so that they can check in on what they're doing. How much have I changed because a different person's come in? Is it right that I want to change? Just checking in with those things. What about this person? What do you think of him?
This last one. He's very self-effacing, and I'm not sure how to deal with him. I mean, he doesn't really seem to know what he wants, and I'm very uncertain about what he wants. And does he actually want to be here at all?
And again, we're already saying, does he want to be here at all after the first 9 seconds? But that's where we go.
Absolutely.
Which of them would you rather deal with?
I think probably the first one.
So many people would say that. It's surprising. So many people say that. I don't know how to deal with him. He's not sure of himself. Very interesting. Let's try one last one, whatever you like.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Keith. Keith Goosey.
Hi. Do sit down, Keith.
Thank you.
You wanted to see me.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Keith, have you been to see the latest Bond? Hello, it's Goosey. Keith Goosey. That was interesting, the effect on you. Are you aware of the effect on you?
Not really.
What did we see? What did people see? There was a little bit of it that was kind of like, ugh. But there was also kind of slight softening underneath that. Strangely attracted to this type of man, I thought. Take a seat. No, you didn't do that. Okay, so what I want you to do is just take 10 seconds to think about your first 10 seconds this time. So you're going to come into Keith, we'll swap chairs again, and I want you to think about your first 10 seconds and what you want him to think about in your first 10 seconds. Can you hit B on me? Hit the letter B. Lovely. Okay, right. Swap over.
Oh, hello, Joella.
Hi, Keith.
Lovely to
Thank you so much for taking the time to see me.
Pleasure. It's nice to actually
Yeah.
meet face to face.
Yeah, and I was really interested to talk to you
Great. Okay, we'll grab a seat and we can do that. We can chat through, the work that you're dealing with at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I was really well. Thank you first of all for responding to my request so quickly, and I was very intrigued by your response, as I said in my email.
Intrigued.
Okay, let's hold it there. One thing I should point out, when we're coaching people, we don't do it this quickly. So I can show you as many things today. It's a bit more directive than we would normally do and a bit shorter. But one of the things we do is to try and make the coaching longer and longer as a session goes on. What changes did you see in Joella? Sorry? More confident. What did she do that displayed that confidence? Voice was stronger. Movement. Interesting enough, a broader stance. Did you notice the stance? She was back to a kind of a really centered stance. We often, when we're working with people, physically work around Alexander. And she had an Alexander, for those of you who know Alexander, a very Alexander stance. Her knees were soft, which is in Alexander, and she could move in any direction. It was very interesting, very similar to this morning's session. How did you feel?
Good. Yeah, I was clear that what I wanted to achieve, and that this was a straightforward conversation, and I was going to get the most distance by just being clear about what I wanted, and balanced, I guess.
It's very interesting. 10 seconds thought. Just consciously thinking for 10 seconds. What am I going to do? What impression do I want? And of course, then that's your platform for the rest of the meeting. So it doesn't just affect the first 10 seconds, it affects the whole thing. That's your platform as you go forward. You're too good at this now, so let's make it a bit more difficult for you.
Right.
Let's make him quite dismissive. Okay?
Okay.
Let's see where that goes.
Oh, yes. Grab a seat, Joella. Okay. Well, I'm not sure what you're hoping to get out of this session today. I mean, I'm happy for us to talk through a little bit of the work you're dealing with at the moment.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much. Well, I was saying that I felt quite intrigued by your response, and I was interested to talk to you because I'm intending to ask other people in your kind of position to do this, and I wanted to understand where you're coming from, not in order to change your mind or anything like that. That's fine with me.
In our terms, she's now in an argument. She's not really in an argument, but if you listen to the music of that, suddenly he tried to break in. She said, "You're not going to let me, I'm not going to let you break in." So if there's a Martian came down, what they would have heard this time, just because he's changed, was that this time you're wrestling, because I told you he was dismissive. You're now wrestling for control. So it's changed you, me just telling you that. So the Martian coming down this time hears, because they're fighting for the space a little bit. And actually one of the interesting things in terms of when we're working on people and their relaxed status, if you like, is the power of silence. Hierarchically in cultures, generally speaking, the higher somebody is in the hierarchy in a society, the more comfortable they are with silence. And I don't know if any of you ever meet any of the royal family, it's amazing how comfortable they are with silence. So pleased to see you. So, what have you been doing? Because nobody will interrupt them. So they're really comfortable with the silence. So let's see if you can hold on to the person before, even though he's not as nice. Let's try that.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
I'm not really sure that there's much that I can contribute to this whole project of yours, Joella.
That's fine.
Okay.
I have to admit, feeling intrigued by what your thinking was.
In what way? What do you say? Intrigued? What do you mean by that?
Okay, hold it there. 3 times you practice to use the word intrigued. Did people notice that? What's intrigued? Adjective. It's very interesting. The first time you said, I was intrigued. The second time, when you had the more dismissive person, you said, I'm quite intrigued. You dropped the... And we all recognize these things, not consciously. He'd have taken that quite and said, it's not the full word, it's just quite intrigued. And this time you used an upward inflection. Well, I'm intrigued, which is an argumentative tonal inflection. I'm going to come in there. How did it feel?
I was feeling my way.
Yes.
I really wasn't sure how to deal with the situation.
Okay, good. Not good that you didn't know how to do. I mean, good. Let's try a change in him, because I want to show the guys here some stuff. Let's try changing him. So let's try it that this time he's quite low kind of status. We're not sure of himself this time. And can you come in this time? So he's still dismissive. He still doesn't want to do it, but his personality is much more deferential. He's much less sure of himself. Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi. I'm Joella.
Oh, Joella, yes, of course, yeah. No, I
Hi.
was expecting you, yeah.
Good to meet you.
You too, yes. Grab a seat.
Thank you.
Right, well, I'm not sure how you want to play this.
I'm not quite sure either.
Okay.
I was interested to meet you.
I mean, I'm not sure that there's. I'm not sure how I can be of help in this situation to you, really.
Well, I guess we need to. Well, perhaps we should take it from the email that I sent you.
Yeah.
And your response.
Yeah.
You remember it was your partner who introduced us.
Yes.
And I asked you if you'd
Okay. How's she doing? What? When did his hand go up over his face there? Anybody notice when it went up? 2 words put it up there. Your partner. You might remember that your partner introduced your partner, WAP. Why do you think he did that? Yeah. See, he's seeing that as you tightening the screw. That's what he's saying. Okay? If you don't say yes, my friend, your partner, and he's going, oh, God. And one of the things that whilst we might be coaching you in terms of behaviours and things, but one of the things is getting people to learn what can they learn about watching other people in that detail. I was working with the head of Audi, and he said, I'll tell you what Interact does. It's forensic feedback. It is very, very detailed in these kind of things. The reason I wanted to take him into that character is I want to show you a technique that we developed. And I'd like to take credit for it being really great thinking and thought leadership and all those kind of things. But actually, I invented this through the need. So a typical Interact workshop would have a facilitator, myself, and 3 actors. And we'd practice in the plenary, and to give everybody a chance to practice with 3 breakout rooms, and to practice with an actor each. Now, facilitators at Interact get paid a lot more than actors do. So we have actors, actor facilitators, and facilitators. And facilitators get paid a lot more because they're more skilled. In fact, our 16 most senior facilitators are just coming to the end of doing the advanced diploma at the academy. But when I went to watch things, I'd see the actors, the poor actors in these rooms, they're having to act, but remember everything to give feedback at the end of the acting. And then at the end, they give the feedback, and the person would say, I don't remember doing that. Are you sure I did that? So I thought we'd have to come up with a technique that we can give them feedback as they go along. So this is called the hand. So I'm going to get you to come in again, and whenever Keith wants to give you any feedback, what he'll do is he'll put his hand up, and he will say, you did something, or you said something, and I felt something. And then he'll say another line to get you back into the scene. When you first do it, it seems a bit strange. It's fine. It's amazing how quickly people get used to the rhythm of this. So that's what he'll do. You did something, and I felt something, and then he'll give you a line to get you back into the scene.
Okay. And that will kind of prompt me to modify my
It's up to you what you do with
I can
it.
do like
You can
whatever I
dismiss
want.
it if you like.
Okay. Right. Okay. Action.
Oh, you're really getting into it now.
Hi, Joella, and really nice to meet you.
And you.
Grab a seat.
Yes. Well, good for you. Thanks for giving me your time today. I was, well, as you know, we said we'd have a conversation, and I was interested in finding out what you
Let her concentrate.
Yeah, I was interested in talking to you because I'm wanting, this is something that I'm wanting to proceed with. You're actually the first person I've spoken to about the book, and I wanted to find out from you if there was anything that I should perhaps pay attention to in talking to other people about this. So really, I guess I need your help with this.
She's smiling and asking for my help, which is great, but she does seem very, very persistent. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of this. And I'm feeling that I may have taken on more than I wish I had. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very supportive of what you're doing. And you have my support. I guess I'm not really sure that there's any part that I can play sort of valuably in the process.
Well, I suppose what would be helpful for me is to understand, well, just to hear your thoughts about it, because if you are feeling not sure about contributing in the way that I'm suggesting, it may be that other people feel like that too. And I guess that's something I need to be aware of if I'm going to ask someone else to do this.
Oh, she's feeling very non-threatening now. I think she's letting me off the hook. Her whole manner is very calm. I'm feeling calmer now and maybe more comfortable about engaging. Well, yes, I'm very happy to talk through sort of any ideas I might have where you might go with this. I mean, I think as far as I'm concerned, it might be inappropriate for me actually to get involved given my position, my profile.
Yeah, well, absolutely fine. I mean, if you feel that you don't want to be involved, that's not a problem. I think what I am interested in is understanding where you're coming from, because I guess you probably won't be alone. There may be, I would expect that if I'm going to ask other people to do this, other men in your position, they may have similar concerns. I mean, I don't know what it is that's led you to feel uncertain. If you felt you could share that with me, I'd really be interested to hear. If not, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, I'll do that. How's she doing? Better? What does Joella really want? What does she want, do you think? She wants to move on? Yeah, very. She wants to know why. Okay, exactly. She wants to know why. And as soon as she gets to that pithy question, you'll notice she asked it 4 different ways, one after the other. I just wonder what were your concerns. For instance, if none of those sentences finished, and this is what we do very often, when we come to the nub of what we really want to ask the person, we can't get it out in one sentence. We can't drive towards that full stop and do what it says and stop and shut up. We can't do that because it's so important to us. We finally got to what we want. Now, one of the ways of getting over that is to come in and do it straight away. So, this is sometimes what you might do. This is like giving somebody another dictionary. I want you to think of a really polite but curt way of asking him that question. And I want you to come in and do that when you first sit down. Okay?
Thinking.
I want you to see the effect of just doing it has on an individual.
Hello.
Hi.
Joella.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Grab a seat.
Thanks.
Right, okay, well, I'm not sure how I can be of assistance to you at the moment.
Well, thanks for seeing me. And I guess the nub of it is that I'd really like to know why you feel you can't participate in the project that we've talked about.
She's
Okay, hold it there. What's interesting from that, and those doing somatics this afternoon about breathing, is the first time she breathed was after it was out. And when we have a difficult thing to say, whether it's, tell me why you won't do it, or whatever it might be, I think you did it really well, really well. But it's like a secret. And it's in here, and it's tightening us all the time. I know that's what I've got to ask him. I've got to ask him, why? And the longer you go on, you see them tensing up and tensing up and tensing up. And then when they do it, they go, did you feel that she was rude to you there?
No, not at all.
The interesting thing is that we don't do it because, oh, surely that's too direct. Surely it's much too direct. But the truth is that the person on the receiving end normally doesn't mind at all. We do a lot of work around giving difficult messages. It might be police, it could be doctors, it could be whatever. And quite often, what they don't want to do is to give the difficult message. They'll put anything in the way. And some of the theories around, so they come in and so imagine I've told you that I've got a message for you, and I'm coming in and I'm telling you that you're going to have to change your work patterns, and I know you don't want to. So they come in and say, I've got quite a difficult thing to say to you all, and you know the economy is going through bad times, and you know our own company is struggling, and they put all these things before the message. And the theory goes that they put them before the message so that we, when we're receiving the message, think something worse. All right? And so when they tell us the bad thing, we go, oh, I love you still. But that's not what happens. What actually happens is that whilst we're thinking something worse, we've emotionally gone through something worse. So we hate you for putting us through something worse before you tell us something we don't like very much. And the best example of this I can think of is kind of the worst kind of message you can get. You imagine that you're a parent at 11 o'clock at night, and your daughter of 15 is having a first late night out. And the curfew's 10:30. And 10:30 comes and she doesn't come back. And you don't want to be a pushy parent, so you leave it till 10:31, and then you phone her mobile, and it goes straight to the answer machine. You leave it about 10 minutes, and you phone her friends, and they say, no, she's not out with us. And then you phone the police, and they say, we can't do anything for 24 hours. She's 15. We'll look, whatever. And then a half an hour later, there's a knock on the door, and you open it, and there's a policeman there, or policewoman there. Do you want anything before the message? You just want the message. And if you talk to the police, they say, you're amazed. What's amazing is how people react. Because it's every spectrum. They've had people say, I'll get my coat. I've got to just be out there. Other people say, I need a drink. Other people say, a policeman, I'll make you a sandwich. People react in different ways. And to second guess them isn't to help them. Actually, it's good that you become reactive to what they do. So getting that message out there relaxes you, he's not offended, and you'll probably get somewhere that you want. I've got 3 minutes left. So I just want to show you one last technique, because I think it's very interesting, and you've agreed to do this because it's the only thing I told you about. We quite often, when we're working with people, especially coaching and stuff, people say, can we use a camera and play it back? And at Interact, we strongly, strongly discourage people from doing this. Really strongly discourage them. Because people aren't themselves in front of a camera. I don't like a camera in the room. Sorry, I do apologize. I just realized there's a camera there. But it changes how people are. And actually, when they see themselves back, they don't see themselves. Because they're not used to looking at themselves. And most of them go, oh, that's what that top looks like on. I didn't know that. It's what we all do. I'm sorry, it's what happens. But if you work with professional actors and specially trained, and we train our actors really carefully to do this, you can give people a unique experience, which is to put them on the receiving side of them. This is the only way this can be done. So Keith's been watching how you've done this, and he'll pick one of your versions, whichever one he wants to, and I'm going to let you be on the receiving end of you. Now, a couple of caveats around this. You have to be trained to do this. It's really important that the actor gives feedback by turning up those elements of the behavior that they want to feed back on, but not turning them up so they become a pastiche in any way, because that would be offensive. The other thing is you have to pick the individual carefully. You can't just do it with anybody in a group, and we've already spoken about it, so that's okay. But I can't tell you how many times when this has been done, the person has said that's the most valuable piece of learning I've ever had, is being on the receiving end of me. So, your unique experience, take a seat, and Keith will now be you.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. What would be really useful for me is to be able to find out from you why it is that you feel uncomfortable about participating in this project.
Right, okay. Well, I'm very happy to talk to you about that. I had some concerns about how the information might be used. I think in my role, I need to be aware of how, as a man in a senior position, I might be seen by women who didn't particularly agree with me.
Yes, well, I can understand that.
Okay, Joella, what did you see?
Well, he seemed to...
What did you see to? That's you.
Yeah. No, he seemed to be thoughtful and considered, open, and ready to have a conversation with me. Mm-hmm. And I felt able to begin to consider that myself.
Okay, good. So you're really happy with yourself. Anything that you, if you could coach yourself now, that you might give feedback on?
No, I'm a bit phased now. I'm not quite sure what to
Actually,
say.
one of the interesting is the effect it had on Joella. Sitting in that chair, what effect did it have? Isn't it really interesting? Do you know how you changed when facing yourself? Real strength in the voice, real confidence, a real taking control of the space and the discussion. So being opposite yourself gave you a different kind of confidence to the one that you bring into the room. This good listening, all the others, but not confident.
Yeah.
Faced with that, you become confident. So it might, let's just, for the last time, and then we'll take the break, can you come in as the you in that chair?
Okay.
Let's see what, I don't know, see where it goes.
What happens?
I've not tried it before.
No, all right. Oops. Just sort this out. I'm going to drop off. Oh, I see.
Just hold it in your hand, it'll be fine.
That's all right. Okay, so...
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Joella. Nice
Keith.
to meet you. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Hi.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
Right. Well, I think it's great that we've actually meet up. I'm not quite sure where we can go with this, but I'm very happy to have a quick chat about
Well, great.
it.
Thanks. That's great. Well, I was just interested to find out more about why you felt you weren't able to contribute to the book. Would be just interested to hear about that.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very complicated subject.
Okay, okay. I think that's a really interesting you coming in. It's a facet of you. It's obviously a facet of you because you were being you sitting in that chair. What I really love about it is he's now got to answer you. And often it's just that simplicity, the confidence. It's not rude, it's not any less open, all the things that you like, but there's a confidence in the question.
Yeah.
You nearly found the first full stop. It was the second one that you found, but you nearly found the first full stop of why do you choose not to do this?
Yeah.
But that's actually the best way to go, because in a sense it's a difficult message.
Yeah.
And you give that message, and then sit back and listen.
Yeah.
And male or female, nobody's ever going to find you pushy, so you're not in danger of getting into that area of arrogance or pushiness.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's fascinating. That's really helpful.
Good. Let's thank Joella. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me your time. Thank you. Thank you, Keith.